Hi, welcome back to the What's New Mama podcast. We are your hosts, Amy. So this episode, we're going to be talking about postpartum depression and postpartum anxiety. A little bit of a serious topic. And we hope that you guys enjoy hearing about our experience and sympathize with us a little bit. So I also wanted to say thank you for listening and tuning in to us today. But first, let's talk about what's new this week, Mama.
Well, you saw I was late to this because, I have a baby that now that I'm working, it's like he's literally like grabbing my thighs and like doing the whole pick me up. And I obviously feel like shit, because I'm working on the computer or I'm doing something for work or whatever it might be. I'm like, I can't, so it feels really
that's because
shitty.
You're working from home, so he's seeing you there and he's just like, I want your attention.
Yeah.
I want your attention. So that sucks.
So
I'm sorry.
But not every day is like that, and Tom does a really good job of like grabbing him and, playing with him and doing all these things. But still, he's like, mommy, But we have a designated time. Bedtime is my time to like soothe him, and
he'll get used to it. It's just routine. It's changing a little bit, so he's gonna be like, it's gonna take him a little bit. He's little, so but they adapt. I know they will.
Yeah. And some days are easier than others. It just happens that he has 3 molars coming in at the same time.
Yeah, that sucks.
So he's extra like,
needy. But I feel like little boys are more needy than little girls.
Little girls.
Because with Sienna, she wasn't like that at all. I mean, she used to, when the teething, she never did that. Like, I don't know. She was more about daddy, I feel.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Well, I mean, that's why they're daddy's girl and mama's boy. that's why that's a thing, I guess,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a little rough, especially just with work.
It's a transition.
Learning how to,
because you just started, so. Yeah. And then for me, I did have a question for our audience, and maybe people can help me in the comments. Give me ideas because so my daughter's going through something where she doesn't want to eat anything. So this week has been really hard because I'm trying to find stuff that she wants to eat, because she has this weird thing where she's sniffing her food and she's like, nope, I don't want it. She's like really big on.
So like she like smells it.
Yeah, she's like, no, I don't want it. I don't want to even try it. So I'm like, I have no idea what to do. It's like, she likes pizza, so we gave her pizza this week, but she'll find if there's like how some sauce, like it'll be like little green things with the leaf and stuff. Yeah.
Parsley or whatever.
She's like, nope, this has something green in it. I don't want it. And I'm like, but this is the same pizza you've been eating for like a while. Same place. Like, what are you talking about? So I don't know. So if anyone has any ideas of what to do, because she's just like really next level picky. I don't know. She's been eating only carbs, like bagels, bread, and pasta.
But they go through that stage.
Yeah, but I feel like it's affecting her mood. She's been kind of cranky. Like, we took her to the dentist yesterday, and she didn't want to cooperate. She had a meltdown in the dentist's office. She's never done that before. So I don't know. Maybe if someone knows or have gone through this, please help me.
Yeah.
Please.
I'm sorry. Yeah. That's rough.
So that's where we are this week.
So bagels, bread, pasta. Is it like pasta with just butter?
Yeah, but you can't tell her you're putting butter. She knows it's butter, but sometimes if she sees me putting it, she goes, no, I don't want anything in my pasta. And I'm like, dude, I've been giving you butter this whole time with your pasta. What are you talking about? So I don't know. What's her deal with that, but she's been having a hard time. And I feel like she's getting really skinny. I mean, we're skinny people here because, your brother was a twig when he was growing up. Yeah. So it's like, we try not to pressure her to like force feed her or anything. But I know she's hungry. I could hear her stomach sometimes grumbling. So I'm at a loss. I've tried vegetables. It doesn't work. I don't know.
What about like cheese?
She's picky. She will only eat mozzarella cheese, and that's not the best. I don't think for her to be eating all the time. I don't know. That's where Victor is right now in the supermarket, walking her through the aisles to see if she picks something that she wants to try.
Okay.
So hopefully we'll find something she'll like and stick to it now.
Yeah. Well, they go through that. And I feel like every parent I know has gone through that phase. Like even with my nephew, like my mom would make chicken or whatever, but if he would see like a speck of pepper or anything in there, it would be the same chicken, the same.
So you're telling me I should probably just talk to Jess or something?
Probably reach out to Jess. She may know because she has 3 of them and they're all different. Like Ava wasn't like that. Ava would eat she still eats everything. And like Madeline, she loved beans with rice. And then it came a point where she didn't want that anymore one day, like randomly. And it's just like, where does that come from? How do you just like switch one day? I don't know. I'm sure there's like a study on it or a nutritionist that's like, oh yeah, this is typical.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, but it's just starting to get me worried because it's affecting her mood and the way she's acting. And
of course, because she's hungry.
And she doesn't know how to tell me she's hungry. So she does, but I don't know. She just resorts to crying and having meltdowns all the time now.
She's hangry.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get into it then. I know this is a hard topic for you because you went through postpartum depression, right?
Postpartum depression. I did have a little bit of postpartum anxiety, but I feel like the postpartum depression really took over. The anxiety was, I think, more of a result of Derek having a really bad case of RSV.
Yeah, I need to tell you that last
2 months. So, but it's interesting because even with the postpartum depression, I think it was, I still to this day, and after talking to, a couple of different doctors, we still determined that it was more of PTSD that was triggered by the RSV experience. And I say that because I was fine, right? I was fine. It was 8 weeks into, postpartum, and I was completely fine. I was exhausted, don't get me wrong. I was very exhausted, but I was happy, and I was just like, oh my God, like I was still in like that bliss kind of, I'm a mom and this little baby's mine and, all of that. I think so so Derek had a really bad case of RSV. This was exactly the day that he hit 2 months. That night we had a wedding that we went to, and we got home. And then that morning, it was like, we got home at like 2 a.m. And then at 6 a.m., we had to go to the emergency room. So it was like, right from then, it was just like crazy. And he couldn't breathe. Like I was breastfeeding and pumping, and we didn't know it was RSV, right? Like we had no idea. We've never heard of this thing. We just thought it was like sniffles or congestion, nothing serious. And I just remember I was giving him milk, and he started like gagging and like couldn't breathe and started like spitting it up. And I took him off the latch and he like threw it up. And I remember waking up Tom, and I was like, we have to go to the emergency room because I don't know what's going on. I remember I couldn't get the snot to like come out. And I just sucked it out like with my mouth. It was, because I was freaking out because he couldn't breathe. And like his face started, and remember he's 2 months old, right? So
there's not like he can tell you anything.
Form of communication at all. And we're freaking out because we're new parents. Like, it was just a crazy morning, a crazy night, to the point where we just drove straight to the hospital, and it was chaos. Everybody was wearing masks because that was when the Delta variant was out. We were like, fuck, we're going to go into this hospital. Like, what if we get COVID, because you don't want to expose yourself to even more things, whatever. Long story short, they had to do a swab in his tiny little nostrils with this. She came over with this big ass Q-tip that looked like freaking this.
Jesus.
To like put up his nose. And I was like, no, don't you have something for kids? Like, you're not going to put that up his nose. She's like, oh, okay, let me see. So she grabbed another one. They did the swab. Obviously he yelled bloody murder. And, I sued them and everything, came back positive for RSV. So they were worried it was like COVID or something. And then they explained to us what that was. And of course, we instantly got on our phones and were like Googling it and looking it up. And we were like, all right. So we called the pediatrician, let them know the diagnosis and all that stuff. And they were like, all right, so come in, monitor it, do, the humidifier, like the works, saline.
Yeah, it's like, unfortunately, there's nothing else you can do. It's like, there's no nothing. Medicine. Like, really, unless it's really bad that you can, whatever. But
yeah. So, we were monitoring and we were doing all the things, right? We were giving him medicine for mucus, like all of that, taking him to the shower, steam, going on walks so he can get fresh air, open up the lungs, literally everything. And I think those are all things that I told you to do, like when Milo went through it. And he just got worse. He just kept getting worse. And we were just like, all right, we kept going to the pediatrician. So I kept telling the pediatrician, this is getting really bad. Like, we need to do something. And he's like, no, just keep monitoring. And I felt so helpless because I just remember the doctor kind of dismissing the whole thing. And from that point on, and also the nurse, like, I couldn't stand her. Like, she was legit the type of nurse that would like gaslight you. Well, she was the one that I think I mentioned it before when I was asking questions about the vaccine schedule and like all that stuff. And she was very like, well, this is what we have to do. And very like dismissive, like, don't question us. Like, you don't have a degree in this. I do type of response. But I was just like, let me not be the crazy new mom. I didn't want to be known as that mom that was just like extra whatever. But then eventually I got over it because I'm like, at the end of the day, I am his mom and I am the one that's going to advocate for him and all of that and do what I think is best for my family. And I got more comfortable in that. So when the RSV happened, that, what she said? I think I mentioned it before. She's like, I was like, he wasn't breathing and like we put him down and his ribs were going in and like the skin was sucking in and I was just like freaking out. And I remember I was like crying and Tom was like trying to like keep me calm and like all that. But he was also internally like freaking out, but he just keeps his composure. That's what he does. But I'm crying. And then she, the nurse says, she's like, well, now wouldn't you wish that there would be a vaccine for RSV? So you
you did say that.
That?
Horrible.
And I was just like, in that moment, I was so caught in like, I can't believe she fucking said that to me. And then after that, I just remember I was telling Tom, I was like, once we get through this, we're going to find another fucking pediatrician because I can't deal with comments like that. Like, are you fucking kidding me? My son can't breathe properly and I'm crying and I'm freaking out over this diagnosis that I know nothing really about. And you have the nerve to say that to me.
Yeah, because she probably thought you were anti-vaccine from the questions that you had before, I guess.
Yeah, but even if I was,
that's not her problem.
I'm paying you, even if I, which I'm not. I respect everyone's decision. I'm not. I just have questions. I am paying you. I'm paying my insurance to pay you, the doctor, to provide me with the service. You're not doing me a favor.
I don't know. I would have backhanded her.
I'm not asking you to do me a favor. Well, Tom does a really good job of keeping me calm.
Well, that's good to know.
because I wanted to. Yeah. I wanted to, but what in that situation, the priority was the baby.
I'm glad because Victor does the same for me because I also would have lost it, even though I probably would have been like, what the fuck? Like really fast? Yeah.
So,
no. But good for you. So, good for you that you didn't come out of your skin.
Even though I still, not to this day, it's one of those things, when you're in the shower and you're like, I should have fucking said this. Yeah. Like, when you have an argument and you're like,
damn, I should have said this. Like, and you play it over and over again. Whatever. I'm sure she got hers. If she has comments like that, I'm sure someone put her in her place already.
Somebody.
It's fine.
Somebody said something at one point. And also we just didn't go back to
that's
them
good.
after.
I'm glad you guys changed.
It's like, and I'm not going to write a freaking review because I then had to deal with my postpartum depression that came right after that, right? So I was busy trying to heal myself. So going into the RSV, and I want to focus on this so much because I truly feel this is
triggered.
What started it. That was a week, 2 weeks. It got worse, progressively worse, even with the steam, even with literally everything. I felt completely helpless. I asked all the moms around me, like, what do you do? Whatever. I Googled it, all the experts on Instagram, whatever. One day I was giving him milk and the same thing happened, but it was like much more severe where he turned like purplish, like, and his lips were like turning bluish because he couldn't like
oxygen. Yeah,
I don't know.
Just not getting
and
to
this
him.
is and this isn't like formula where it's like, you know, it could be that maybe it wasn't mixed. This was breast milk. There wasn't, you know, anything else added to it, not cereal, nothing. And so I was like, and I was telling Tom, and I was holding him, and he was like, and I put him forward, and I was like tapping his back and doing all of that. And still, and like, I did the same thing with the nose. I went in there and I just sucked it out with my mouth and took out the snot. And I just remember, okay, we're going to have to go to the hospital, see if they can do something. Went to the hospital. They checked his vitals and all that stuff. And his oxygen was pretty low. Like, he couldn't breathe on his own. And so they were like, okay, they checked, they did like an x-ray, they did a bunch of stuff, and they ended up leaving him in there. When they left him in there, it was the monitoring. Like, he had like tubes up his nose for the oxygen. It was one of those things that, like, I looked at him, and obviously it's RSV. So like, Tom's like, he can't die from this. Like, it's just going to be hard.
Because he's so small.
It's going to be hard to see him. He's not going to die. Like, he kept telling me, because I kept crying. I was like, is he going to? He's like, he's not going to die. And the doctors kept trying to like put that in there. But when you see your kid not being able to breathe and they're that young, I was just like, there's nothing you could have told me that would have really been able to calm me down at that point. And you just feel helpless because you see them struggling, right? So whatever, we're in there. I think it was like 3 days in. I don't remember the exact time, or 2 days in. And we were holding him, and after feeding him and all that stuff, and then Tom was holding him, and then his body just went limp, and he was not responsive. And Tom was like, Derek, like, you know, trying to like get his attention again. And then I was on the bed, and he's like, I was like, what's happening? What's happening? And he's like, I don't know. He's just not responding. And he felt like his body limp, you know, go limp. And then I was like, well, let me see. And like, I grabbed him and I held him, and I kept trying to like wake him up and pat his back and all that stuff. And we pressed the button for the nurse to come in. And she came in, and she couldn't get him to like respond. And then literally 8 or more doctors flew in the room when she made that call. And they all like, they were like, we gave them Derek, and they ended up, sucking snot out. They put the saline, they put oxygen. We couldn't see from, because they moved us out. And they went in and they did what they had to do. They explained everything to us as it was happening. And one of the nurses, he was so nice. He was like holding us and like, okay, they're doing this now,
like explaining
and
everything.
Now. Yeah. And both of us, like, I just remember holding Tom, and like, I was like, what if he dies? Like, what if he doesn't make it through? Like, and then like, I can't even really narrow it down still to this day, but it was just one of those moments where I saw all the doctors rush in and all the nurses. And then at one point they took us out of the room. The whole hallway was full of the nurses and doctors waiting to make sure that he was okay. Cause he was the only baby there that young that had RSV. And they were all looking at us like, you know, you see it in their faces and they feel bad. And then I'm like, you know, they're looking at us. I'm like, are they looking at us because it's like
like
really, really bad,
yeah,
you know,
made you worry more.
Yeah. But seeing all the doctors, all the nurses, the hallway, in the room, they brought us back into the room once he was better, and they were like, okay, that was when they strapped him in. They put everything up his nose. They cleared out the mucus. So like he had a blockage essentially of all the mucus that was built up in his lungs, like, and all that. And it was that moment that after that, Tom and I, like, I don't think there's a thing where fathers can get postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression. I don't think that's like a term, but Tom definitely had a version of it. He had like some sort of postpartum anxiety after that happened, because he was also, I developed postpartum depression. He had the postpartum anxiety to the point where it was the stress of, is he breathing? Are his lungs okay? When we went home. And it was just constant anxiety over it. And then after that, once everything, you know, he got better, we were discharged, we got home, then the thoughts started rolling in. I'm a terrible mom.
You essentially were blaming yourself for what happened.
Yeah, that was my fault. And also that feeling of feeling your 2-month-old's body in your arms, limp, no response, and you're just
that really did a number on you.
Now? Like, yeah, and I think on both of us, right?
Yeah.
He was the first one to hold him, and I remember us constantly bringing that up, like that feeling of holding him and not getting a response. Really, like, that fucked us up, because that really, like, messed us up. And Tom obviously has a different way of expressing himself and keeping his composure. I, on the other hand, turned to self-blame, and it's my fault. I should have done a better job. I'm a terrible mom. Like, all of those thoughts
just invaded your mind.
Like, yeah. And when you're home and you're just pumping, breastfeeding, taking care of the baby, there's no socialization, because that was December. And the Delta variant, like, everybody was home, because people that didn't get COVID before got it for the Delta during that Christmas. Literally everybody that I know that didn't get it got it around that time. So we couldn't visit anybody. Christmas, his first Christmas, we stayed home, because we were discharged from the hospital the 21st. We didn't know if we were going to be discharged or not. So we didn't know. And he was obviously still sick. And then I ended up getting RSV. So I also was sick. I lost my voice and all that stuff. So on top of him being sick, I was sick. And then those thoughts were like, literally, it was like a seed that was like growing in my head of, you're a terrible mom. It's your fault that happened. You should have done a better job. And Tom's like, no, like, this happens. Like, he's a baby. And then when we looked it up, it's like a common thing. Like, RSV is a common thing, which now, you know, we're more exposed to it. We know whatever. But at the time, we didn't know that. And
kids just get sick in general. And it's, I know it's, at the time, it was just like, what did I do that this happened? You know, was I sick? Did I bring germs in? Or, you know, I know all those questions do come up. And I'm sorry that that invaded your brain in such a way.
But also, I think my hormones aren't leveled out yet too, right? So I'm breastfeeding. There's no period, right? That also, your hormones are crazy. So I'm more susceptible, on top of the fact that I've had depression or anxiety before in the past, right? So I don't suffer from it chronically, but it's been there. There's things
but also, I also think you were like coming from such a good high, having your baby, being home, and then it just straight plummeted down. And it's like that. I think that did it.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Yeah, and so after that, like I was like, I need to schedule an appointment with my doctor, because I know this isn't normal. Like I didn't feel like myself, and it was affecting Tom and I. Like, we would argue. I would
just snap.
I would find things to argue and snap at him, and like literally, like we were talking about it the other day, because I told him, you know, this is gonna probably be the next episode. We're gonna talk about this. And And he's like, yeah, like our marriage was like in question because I was not okay. And it came out and it obviously affected us. And he was also dealing with what had just happened too in his own way, where we were both kind of broken. I was more susceptible to it and more messed up than he was, but all we had was each other at that time, and we just went at it, right? So fast forward, made the appointment with the doctor, the first doctor, and I couldn't get into my gynecologist, so then I spoke to the pediatrician. The pediatrician with the same nurse that just, said the comments, but I was like, I need to see somebody, so I need to know that I seeked help, right? That I did my part. I went in and he was like, he's like, just exercise, like go back to your workout routine and it'll help you get your mind off of everything that had just happened, right? And all that stuff. And obviously they knew every detail that happened because he's the pediatrician. Yeah. We had to keep him up to date with what happened at the emergency room and the hospital and all that stuff. And I, in that moment, felt so stupid. I was like, oh, is that it? Like, is that all solution? That I was supposed to do? Yeah. And so I came back and Tom's like, well, what'd they say? And I was like, well, he was just like, just work out and just get back to your regular routine. It'll help you and you'll get back to yourself. And so that was that first. And then I was like, well, how am I supposed to find time to work out? I'm full-time breastfeeding, pumping, and it's freezing outside and people are sick and I'm exhausted. Yeah. Right? Like we're not sleeping. We're exhausted. Like when am I supposed to find the time to do that? So that didn't work out. Then 2 weeks later, I said, okay, I got into my, my regular doctor and then I spoke to him and then he said, we could just put you on pills if you want. Yeah. Yeah. And do that. And I was like, yeah, but aren't there steps that maybe I can take before that? And he's like, well, here's a number for a therapist that you can talk to, whatever. The number that he gave me for the therapist is a number that's no longer working. And the therapist, when I Googled her, found a number and kept leaving messages. I left like 4 messages. Hey, this is Giselle. Like I'm going through postpartum depression. I was referred by blah, blah, blah. No response. Never got a call back. Never heard anything. Right. I was like, all right, I'm just going to stop talking about this to people because I feel like an idiot. Every time I went to go get help and I just felt like an idiot. But then finally I got in with my OBGYN and I spoke to him and he was one of the first ones to really be like, listen, he's like, this is past the 6-week mark, right? The 6-week checkup and everything else. I'm pretty sure possibly that this does happen to more women, but because women don't report it, women don't talk about it, doctors don't check for it. They also don't know to check for it because women don't speak up on it. He's like, it does sound to me, he's like, listen, your hormones were all the way over here. And he explained it to me in a way that's not just working out. It's not just getting more rest. It's literally your hormones are all the way over here. They plummet and then they're still trying to like level out on top of, I had the RSV experience. He's like, I think the RSV triggered that trauma, like that response in your brain on top of your hormones being, and he was the first one to like really explain it to me and a point where validated how I felt and my theory. Cause that's what I was telling Tom. And he's like, have you seeked out therapy? And he gave me like a list of like therapists that I can talk to. He's like, yes, there's always medication we can try, but he's like, let's try speaking to a therapist. Let's try all that, which is exactly what I thought would be, some sort of a solution, right? So went out, I felt better. Finally, somebody said, let me listen and let you know that you're not alone. I'm glad you found someone that did listen. Yeah. Yeah. And, obviously he understood as much as he possibly could, right? But he was still more there for me than the others, right? So I called a therapist, scheduled appointment, and I had everything was virtual sessions at that point. That was the first therapist. The first therapist, she just didn't have availability to consistently meet with me, which wasn't her fault. She's just high demand. She was great. We bonded. She's a woman of color, and she was telling me about like her struggles after giving birth, and we connected. But unfortunately, it was like I needed more consistency, like at least twice a week to like talk to somebody and all that stuff. She was available like once a month, so it wasn't gonna work. That was one. Went to therapist number 2, found another one. She kept looking at the timer on the bottom. So we would be on calls and I'm crying and I'm like telling her, hey, I don't feel like being alive. I feel like my husband and my son would be better off without me because I feel like I'm a burden to them, or I feel all these things. And she's literally like looking at the bottom of the time, like where the timer is. Cause I can see where the timer is, which is the same location for her. And like, I would see her and I'm like, so I had like 2 sessions with her and then I was like, I can't.
Yeah, you're not even paying attention to me. Like, yeah.
Yeah. You're just looking at the timer. So let's see. That's one doctor, pediatrician, OBGYN, and then 1, 2, that's 5 doctors so far. Right. Then Tom and I were still, he's like, listen, like, fine, you can try, like, we tried other things. Like I tried to start working out again as much as I could. I tried to get a little bit more sleep. He was picking up the majority of the work with the baby so that I can try and get some rest. It helped a little bit, but it was still like, then I felt guilty for sleeping in, or I felt guilty for not doing more with the baby and left it up to him. So then the mom guilt started triggering, well, they're better off without you because they don't need you at this point. Tom has it. Everything. Tom's got it covered. It's so crazy to have that. And I say the word crazy for lack of a better word, but it's so absurd to like have those thoughts and then truly believe that that's the reality and like that's how Tom feels, which he didn't, obviously. And so I was like, okay, I went to a new doctor because we were like in the middle, we just moved and all that stuff. Went to a new doctor and before I go into that, it got to the point where I would wake up crying every day and I would literally tell Tom, I shouldn't be here with you guys. Like, I felt unworthy of having what I had, which is a loving husband, a baby that like gave me unconditional love and all that stuff. And I still felt that attachment to him, but I felt like they would be better off without me because I was such a burden, right? A burden on them. And Tom was like, go and try one more person. Just try and see if they respond. And he's like, if not, like, we'll try something else. Like, and he truly made me feel comfortable with getting help and saying I'm not a failure for not being able to control it myself, because that's my narrative. If I can't figure it out myself, then I'm a failure. If I can't fix it, I'm a failure. And so I went and I found this other doctor and we were talking, and I'm trying to like keep myself like the composure, right? Not break down and like cry. And we're talking and I hear it in my voice, the quivering. And then she's like, okay. She's like she gives me a list of people that I can talk to and all that stuff. And then I ended up like crying and like just like breaking down. And I was like, because I think I just wanted somebody to give me a solution right then and there, because I felt that if they didn't, I wouldn't be here. And I felt like I really, like I needed like an immediate fix, because I was genuinely scared that I wouldn't push through, right? And then I started crying. And she hugged me.
Sometimes that's all it takes.
She hugged me and she said, she's like, oh my God. She's like, you're suffering so much. She's like, let me help you. Like, let me help you. And she moved the paper away. She hugged me and she's like, listen, I have 3 boys. I know what this is like. And there's, women just, we don't talk about it. And I'm glad that you, and I told her what led me to her. And she's like, you tried with 5 other providers and you tried, kept trying, and you're here. That says a lot, because you could have
Just
easily
given
said,
up completely. Yeah.
I'm not going to talk about this anymore. And, you know, even with Tom and all that stuff, and nobody around me knew, like nobody. And like, I think I brought it up occasionally, like my brother Ramel, and like, you know, I would bring it up like, oh no, like I definitely have some sort of postpartum depression, but I would still smile through it, right? The outside world didn't know just how severe it was, where I was like, yeah, I have my moments, because I didn't want to burden anybody, and I didn't want to worry anybody, right? But Tom saw it all. And the doctor said, she's like, listen, you could still go through this list of therapists, and, you know, these are all really good. It's like women specific therapists, like that deal with, so she's like, really good. And you, whatever you feel comfortable with, I would say go to them and they'll help you. She's like, but let me, if I may, she's like, let's put you on something really quick. That way it can help you reset. She's like, it doesn't have to be forever. It can just be something to help you get out of bed, not cry, not feel like you're a burden. And then you can slowly ease your way back into your routine of, you know, your workouts and your regular lifestyle. And I don't know why, but before I had like that stigma feeling of, I don't want to go on medication for depression or whatever it might be, because I can just work out. I can just do this, but I couldn't. I physically couldn't get myself to do it, because I mentally was exhausted and drained and all of that. And so a big part of that was, this was at like when Derek was 7 months. A big part of that, she's like, listen, the only thing is, I know you're exclusively breastfeeding and pumping. It would seep through the milk, right? And I didn't want that. Why would I want Derek to, you know, get unnecessary medication for something that he's not struggling with? So I had to be okay with the decision of stopping breastfeeding, stopping pumping. That was another feeling of guilt and like failure that I had to like talk myself out of, and Tom had to talk myself out of. He's like, you're making this decision. So like, she gave me the medication. She's like, if you want to take it, it's there. It'll help you, but it's up to you. I'm going to leave it up to you. If you want to just talk things through and do the therapist, I'm going to leave it up to you, but it'll help you. This is something that we've given other mothers that have gone through it, that have spoken up about what they're going through, and it has helped them. So it wasn't just like something like the other doctor that was like, oh, we could just put you on
some random medication,
whatever, Zoloft or whatever. So she's like, no, this has been shown to help moms specifically with this problem. And so I remember we got the prescription, and I got home, and I was like, I'm not ready to not breastfeed or to not pump. I felt like, what do I do? What kind of formula do I get if I do that? And I had obviously a frozen stash that I had prepared just in case if I was going to go back to work, whatever it might be. So I had that there that I knew would hold me down for a little bit. But then I felt like a terrible mom for not doing that, not pumping, not breastfeeding anymore. And I think I had to truly be okay with it. And I remember the night that I decided to do that, I cried. I held Derek and I cried, and I was talking to him, and I was like, I love you. And I'm sorry, because obviously he's still going for my boob, and he's still like, you know, trying to like do the usual. He doesn't know, right? And so I would latch him on, and I would pump on the other, whatever. I always had a favorite one. I would latch him on, usually my left, or, you know, like, because one of them hurt more than the other. It was just all of that. So I remember like crying as he's like just there, like minding his own business, eating. Like, he
had no idea all this that you were going through.
And I'm just there crying, like, oh my God, I can't believe, because I just knew, like, I had to
take care of yourself,
not just for me,
because you needed to be there for him and your husband as well. So,
and I think something Tom said to me really stood out and like made me like, I have to. he's like, what good is this kid's life gonna be knowing that he doesn't have a mom around? But, you know, and he's like, if you really want to be there, you want to be a good mom and all that stuff, then just try it. Like, just try it, you know? And I think that was the moment of, like, I want to be his mom, and I want to do what's best for him. Then I have to get over this hump of, you know, whatever. And, anyway, so that I had him on, and I was like, I was talking to him, and I was telling him, okay, so I love you, and you know, I just want you to know, like, mommy has to do this, and blah, 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 blah. He doesn't understand, but I had the conversation, and I'm crying, and, you know, we put him down to, like, walk around or whatever, not walk around, crawl around and all that. And then Tom was holding him, and then I grabbed him again because I wanted to hold him and, like, all that. And he said, Mama. That was the first time that he said anything. And he said, Mama. And that was his first word, Mama. And then all he kept saying was, Mama. That was the night that I decided, okay, tomorrow morning I'm going to take the medication, and I'm going to stop pumping. I'm going to stop. And, you know, we were living off of the breast milk that I had already pumped and all that stuff. But the next day, I latched him on before I took the medication, because I couldn't. I was like, just one more time to have that moment. And I just remember I took, like, photos of it, and, like, I recorded a part of it because I just didn't want to forget it. Like, I don't want to, you know, it's so weird. I don't know. It's weird, but I just wanted to capture it as much as I could, because I know that at that time I was very foggy brained and, like, exhausted, and I didn't want to forget that moment, because when I look back, I had postpartum depression, but I still think of all the good, like, the good moments. Yeah, that's good. Right. And so that morning, after I latched him and I pumped one last time, I took the medication, and I was on that for about a month and a half. Okay. And I was back to myself. And so the doctor was like, see, like, you know, for you, like, we didn't have to do a long-term thing. But I was okay if we had to. I had already had that conversation with myself. Come to terms with it. All of that. Yeah. And I remember, I knew I was really comfortable with it, because I remember I was hanging out with my friend Neil, and I remember telling him about it, and he's like, why didn't you tell me, like, what you're going through and all that stuff? I was like, I don't know. I was embarrassed. Yeah. All of that. And he was just like, you know, like, I just remember telling people after the fact. And I just remember them saying, like, why didn't you tell me? Like, I wish I would have known, or, you know, like I can't imagine if you wouldn't be here, you know, like, just things like that. But here we are. It was rough, but after that I was, like, able, and also I wasn't breastfeeding and pumping, so my boobs didn't feel like massive footballs attached to me. So
did you have a hard time with that? Like, after, was it, like, still full, or did you? So I pumped and dumped, because if not, you know, then I'll get mastitis and all that good stuff, all of that, and it would get hard. Like, so I had to at least, I went from pumping, like, 8 times a day, and, like, all that, to 2 times. I did a slow, like, 3 times, 2 times, then 1 time. And then finally I would just, like, massage, put, like, something warm, whatever, and then stop it. And I didn't get, like, an infection or anything, because I did, like, a slow ramp up, you know, so, or ramp down. I don't know, you know. So that was that experience and that journey. And, you know, obviously, maybe I'll talk to Derek about it at one point in his life, maybe not. But I just know that if we do decide to have another kid, that's on my radar now. Yeah. Like, we talk about that too. Like, you know, there's a possibility that this may happen. I don't know. Because there are moms that do get it, and then they have another pregnancy, they don't get it. There are moms that never had it, and then they have another pregnancy, then they do get it. Yeah. It's literally just, you don't know. And
truly can pinpoint it back to the RSV experience, but also, you know, we had Delta variant, we had all this chaos going on in the world that contributed to like this feeling of
there's
doom.
a lot of isolation. You weren't going out and doing things. So
so it was hard. But it helped that I had, even though, again, Tom and I, like, our marriage was like on the brink of like, because he was like, just get help. Like, he was pushing me to get help, and I was like, I got this. Like, I can figure it out. I don't need anybody's help. I don't need anybody's help. Like, that was legit, but that's the
Latina personality. Because I'm the same way.
So we would clash because of that. Because he's like, Giselle, you're suffering.
Well, at least you had him like giving you that extra. It might have been annoying at the time, but it was probably something you needed. That outside push.
And I had that feeling like when I would go, I would be by myself, like in the bed or in a couch, whatever, and he would be like showering or something. I would have those thoughts of, this poor guy is just trying to help me. And I'm over here like, I don't need anybody. Like, but it's not even like I don't need anybody. It's just I truly didn't see how severe it was. But it took somebody from the outside, even though he was, you know, in it, but he's still on the outside of my head, right? To say, no, like, this is really bad. Yeah. Like, this is really bad. You're telling me you don't want to be alive. Like, you don't want to be around because you feel that we'd be better off without you around. Giselle, that doesn't make sense. Like, that's I'm not a normal thought.
He was there to do that.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm very fortunate that I have
a support system.
Partner like him. And, you know, again, nobody knows. Like, I can't talk to my mom about this. Like, they'll just think they wouldn't understand. Like, even though my mom went through, I know that my mom went through, like, she had a stillborn and she had miscarriages. And from what I know, she had, like, what is now known as postpartum depression, which back then they didn't know. So I know that she had those things, but I didn't feel comfortable talking to her about it or anybody else for that matter, because the times that I did bring it up to somebody, it was kind of just like brushed off. So I don't know if it's just a matter of comfort level, right? Like everybody has a different comfort level. They may not feel comfortable talking to you about suicidal thoughts and like what you're struggling with mentally, and that's okay. But I just felt that I couldn't talk to anybody else, especially when the people that I was told I should talk to, like these doctors, were the ones that were dismissing me in the first place, or making me feel.
Understand what they gain. And you take an oath to help people. Don't you want to do everything you can in your power to help someone? I don't know. I would never understand that. Just dismissing someone. So, yeah.
And maybe in their minds they weren't. Maybe in their minds they were truly giving me the best. And that's, see, this is just me as a person. I always give everyone the benefit of the doubt, even if, right, that happened. But I just always think, like, you know, I'm just very lucky. Like, when I look back, I'm very lucky and fortunate and forever grateful that I have Tom as my partner to help me through all of that and see how ugly it can be and still love me and still support me and say, I'm here for you. And then I had that doctor that said, why are you, let me help you. Like, you're suffering, let me help you. And made me feel like I wasn't a crazy person that was just like irrationally like going through something, you know, that was, I guess I felt, this is what I felt. I felt I had no right to complain or bitch about it or feel this way because I have a pretty good life that I've worked for to have this life. And so I felt, I have no right to feel this way. And I think that's why I was so hesitant to get help, because I was like, I'll push it down. I'll work through it and I'll pretend everything's fine until everything's fine. Right. And again, this is why I wanted to start this podcast, because these type of experiences after I went through it, there's a couple of moms and they know who they are. I'm not going to mention names. That said, oh my God, I went through the same exact thing and I didn't know who to talk to. And they were like, listen, if you ever have thoughts like that again, or if you, whatever, please reach out to me because I know exactly how you feel. And I was like, what about the other moms that don't have that community, don't have that I know how you feel. I know. And so that's where this came from. And that was in the summertime when I was just coming out of it and I was just comfortable talking to people about like, oh no, I actually felt like killing myself, or I felt like not being around anymore because, you know, whatever, you know, of what happened. And they were just like, yeah, like I felt the same way. And I thought I was the only one. And that's literally everything that I thought I was the only one. I thought every mother that I've spoken to thought they were the only one. And I feel like as a society, like, what are we doing that we're allowing that thought process to be a thing, right? Like, why do we feel like we're the only one? It could be we don't talk about it because whether, you know, you feel ashamed or embarrassed, but maybe it's because when you do talk about it, you're met with a dismissive kind of like gaslighting response of,
you're just crazy.
Right.
It's like, why would you even talk like that kind of attitude?
Yeah, like what, you know, or things like that. Or because people go through it on their own, they suffer in silence. Like you see people, what was it, Twitch, you know, like that, the dancer. Yeah. Did you see like the guy from Ellen? Like he suffered from depression and like he was always smiling and happy. And everybody that would see me from the outside during that time, like, they would have never known unless I'd said something. And people were like, oh, but they were always so happy and they were always part of their family. And, you know, he would do like all those videos, but you just never know what somebody's going through.
Or what their thought process is and anything. Yeah.
What their thought process is. And that's why I'm always like, treat everybody with respect and kindness, even if they're treating you like a certain way. Just keep them from a distance because you just don't know what they're going through internally. Maybe what they're going through internally is what's making them treat other people that way or whatever. And I think I'm a big believer in just, we are social beings and we need to be able to interact with each other and let the other know that they're not alone, because life is fucking hard and there's just shit that happens. And I think, even if it's something that you want to talk about, to celebrate. Like, I think you should have that ability to call somebody up and say, hey, this really good thing happened to me, or this really shitty thing happened to me, and I don't know who else to talk to about it, or whatever it might be, because you just don't know. And it doesn't matter how good somebody's life may look from the outside. Internally, like, it's out of your hormones and your chemical makeup in your brain.
Everyone's different. Yeah.
It's out of your control.
It's just...
So it's so crazy to me. And Tom and I talk about this all the time, just how it's literally your brain and you have no control over that. Like, yes, you can eat better, you can exercise, you can get sunlight and, you know, the vitamin D and like all of that stuff, magnesium, ashwagandha, whatever, right? Whatever you do. But there's still something that's a chemical makeup or the way that your brain is structured that will make you more susceptible to certain things, right? Certain feelings. And I think I say all that to say is just, if you're going through something, reach out to anybody, even if it's to me. I don't care. If I don't know you personally, please reach out to me. I would never want somebody to feel alone. And I think that's my purpose.
So I want to thank you for sharing your story. I did go online to share with everyone these numbers. So
we'll put it up in the description if they
if you need help for the National Maternal Mental Health Hotline, you call 1-833-9-HELP-4-MOMS. That's 1-833-943-5746. And the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. And there's also a Postpartum Support International that you can find someone that can talk to you. if you don't feel comfortable talking to anyone in your life. So that's 1-800-944-4PPD or 4773.
Thank you for sharing that. And we'll put it up in the,
description. I just wanted to do that because I obviously did not have postpartum depression. I had a little bit of anxiety. But I just wanted to actually just leave the episode here because I think your story is what we needed to hear.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for making me feel comfortable to share that. And thank you to everybody listening, because it's not easy.
Yeah, I know Giselle was crying, and I'm sure you guys were like, oh my God, Amy has such a strong face. I was pinching myself the entire time just so I wouldn't cry, because I am number one crybaby. And my sister knows this, and she's probably wondering why I didn't cry. But I'm such a hard ass sometimes. I will do this. So, yeah. But my heart was thumping the whole time. So.
Oh yeah, no, I appreciate you very much, and I wouldn't be able to do it without you.
Thank you. No, thank you. Thank you for having me join you in this.
Okay, all right. So thank you, everyone. If you have any comments or anything like that, please reach out. We're here. Obviously, we're not medical professionals, but we are fellow mamas, and we have our own experience to share. May be similar, may not be similar, but we're here and willing. So thank you for listening, and thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
That's right.
For our episode, right? Okay. All right. Bye, everyone.